Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform for creatives. If I had to quickly sum up my feelings about the Bronica ETR series, I'd say that it's a camera that gets the job done. It feels almost blue collar. This is a system that appealed to me as a 645 option for a couple different reasons, and over the past few weeks, I ended up spending a considerable amount of time on the road exploring and creating some new personal work, and I decided to bring along the ETRSi just to test out and get a feel for this camera that is somewhat new to me. And after shooting a number of rolls, I wanted to make this video just to share my experience with it, talk about how I think it performed, and then also how I feel it stacks up against other options in the 645 world, hopefully to help you out if you're looking for a new camera. So I've been curious about the Bronica ETR for quite a while now, and the reason that I decided to pick one up is because I was in the market for a medium format system that was a little more compact and lightweight, just for some upcoming backpacking and hiking trips that I have planned, and obviously this kind of fit the bill perfectly and gives me a lot of flexibility. If you aren't familiar with the ETR system, it's a modular camera system, so you can basically build it up or strip it down however you want. This camera that I purchased came with the Ae2 Finder, and then it also came with the speed grip. So it just gives me some flexibility in terms of how I can use this, which is pretty cool. But what was kind of a standout for Bronica when these ETR cameras were released back in I think 76 or 77 is the fact that they have interchangeable film backs. And at the time there was the Mamiya M645 and the Pentax 645, kind of the two other systems out there. They didn't have that feature, so the Bronica has definitely always been one that gives you a lot of flexibility as a photographer. As mentioned, I have the Ae2 Finder. I found this very nice to work with. Looking through the Finder, nice and big and bright, it just gives you like a simple little shutter speed readout at the bottom. But the cool thing is that it gives you these two shooting modes to choose from. So you have a manual mode where it just tells you what to set the camera to, but it also gives you this automatic aperture priority mode, and then you just set the ISO on the side here and choose your exposure compensation. So the cool thing is in that mode, you don't have to worry about touching the shutter speed at all in the camera body. You can just leave it set to whatever, and then the camera's just gonna automatically choose the correct one. And I found this to be very accurate, which surprised me. I would say I had like no underexposure in any of my images. There were a couple negatives that were like really dense, but I think what happened with those is I almost probably forgot to change it to the automatic mode and left it in manual, and then I was just shooting with whatever shutter speed the camera was set to by accident. So when Bronica first started making cameras, they actually had Nikon making their glass, which is pretty cool, but they eventually brought it in-house, and from everything I had read, people seemed very happy with the quality of their optics. There's a number of options available for the ETR system, probably everything you would need when it comes to focal lengths to choose from. I ended up getting the 75mm 2.8, which is the standard lens for this system. And then I also bought the 50mm 2.8, which is a little bit wider. This would be equivalent to like a 35mm or just a bit wider than that in the 135 format. But over the years, Bronica updated their lenses. So the originals were labeled MC, that's what this 50mm is. Stands for multi-coated. Then I think they went to the E2 versions and then to the PE, which were the latest ones. And that's what this 75mm is. When it comes to lens performance, I ended up using the 50mm for most of the images that I made, and I had very mixed feelings about it. I loved the look, but I was a little bit disappointed by the sharpness. I noticed that in most of my images there was like pretty severe softness near all of the edges of the frame. The center was nice and sharp, but there was just this huge drop off after that, and that was even shooting at smaller apertures like f8 and f11. The 75mm on the other hand, as mentioned before, is the latest PE version, and even though I didn't shoot much with it, it was noticeably sharper than the 50. They did make a newer PE version of this lens. I'd actually be very curious to see how that one performs, and to be honest, I'll probably end up buying that one just because I did enjoy this focal length quite a bit, but I was, surprised by the performance of this. I'd be curious if you've used this lens before to hear your opinion on it as well. Sharpness aside though, I will say that I did really enjoy the look from both of these optics and was happy with a lot of the images just when it came to how the lenses rendered these scenes and the colors in them. But before we jump into a few more points with this camera, I just want to take a second to talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is Squarespace. So I've been using Squarespace for a number of years now for different creative pursuits, and I just love how easy and how intuitive it is, and also the professional results that it gives me. So currently using it for my podcast website. It allows me to have episode pages, even an online store if I want. But then I'm also finally building out a new portfolio website with some of this updated work. I love how clean some of the templates are and just how easy it is to do things like rearrange galleries. So Squarespace really is a great all-in-one tool for creatives. So check out squarespace.com today for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, you can use the link squarespace.com/Kyle McDougall to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Okay, let's jump back into the review. Time for some critiques, and I do have a couple. The first one, and probably the biggest, is just the focusing screen that comes with the ETRSi. The one in this camera, you can get other options from Bronica that you can easily install, but this one is just like a plain matte screen, so there's no focusing aid at all. There's no micro prism or split screen or anything like that. And I found it very difficult, especially shooting like wider landscapes, to know when you're like nailing your critical focus. And I actually found some of my images were a little bit soft because I'd obviously missed the mark. So that was a little disappointing, but I think I'll definitely be looking into getting a new screen for this camera that has some sort of focusing aid. The second one, and this is kind of minor, it's also something that comes with a lot of these older film cameras from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And that is just that the ETR is fully electronic. So there's contacts everywhere, you know, with the finder to the body, to the film back. The speed grip even has them. So obviously there's always this concern that, you know, if something goes wrong, this could turn into a brick. And the last one, this is something that's personal. It's not a huge deal, and it's not going to affect like the overall performance or usability of this, but that is just the overall feel of the ETR. And it just kind of feels like it's lacking some of that precision that comes with other film camera systems. So, you know, things are just like a little bit wobbly, the film advance here. Some of the dials, to get them to like click into place, I found I had to wiggle them a bunch to get them to snap in. You know, it feels a little bit plasticky. I know that the ETR has a really good track record for durability, so it wouldn't stop me from buying this camera or even keeping it. But it is something that I just wanted to point out as it kind of stood out to me while I was using it. So nowadays in the 645 market, a lot of the options are going for similar prices. So the Pentax, the Mamiya M645, and the Bronica system are all very comparable. But the Bronica obviously offers some features that the Pentax and the older Mamiya don't. And I think it's really all comes down to just picking which system is right for you. They're all gonna be capable of producing great work, but they all have kind of different offerings that are gonna suit you better depending on the type of work you do. And in the past, for me, the Pentax was a great fit. But the Bronica now gives me some flexibility that I think will come in handy as I start to kind of branch out into some different situations. Even though there's a few things that bothered me, you know, mainly the performance out of that 50mm and the focusing screen, there are problems that can be fixed, and I can say right now that this is a system that I'll definitely be hanging on to. So in closing, I'll say that I look at the ETRSi purely as a tool, and it's not, you know, the most sexy camera system out there by any means. People are never gonna be talking about this in like mythical ways, speaking about like the Bronica look, but it is a camera that just gets the job done. It's very capable, and really for me, with the tools that I use, that's kind of what matters most. So if you need a 645 setup, like I said, I don't think you can go wrong with any option from any manufacturer. They're all gonna be capable of producing great images, but if you do need one that gives you a lot of flexibility, the Bronica is definitely worth a look.